Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome to art class with Mr. Darby, the art man. Today we're going to work on turning our cursive name into a monster using a line of symmetry and symmetrical shapes. So we're going to turn our name into a monster, maybe an alien, it's up to you. And at the end, if it looks like a name at all, you start over because it didn't work out right. Your goal is to try and make your name look like something besides your name while practicing cursive at the same time. Let's check this out. Here's an example that I did of my name, my first name Adam. If I turn it this way, you should be able to check it out. A-D-A-M, and then I just added the feet. So when we make our fold, all right, and our line of symmetry, we make the name then on the left side matching the right side, and all of a sudden I have a strange alien creature, maybe something that crawled out of a toxic waste dump. But let me show you how this is going to come together. The first thing you ought to do while you're working on this is practice writing your name in cursive. I have typically made the kids do it 10 times. If they can make their name 10 times, then they're ready to move on. And they could practice their first and last name. You're only going to need your first name. And then just think about, if you have a long first name, then you kind of end up in a situation where it's so big that the monster takes up the whole page, and maybe it would look like some sort of a strange centipede, and that is not necessarily what you want every time. So practicing my name in cursive. And I'm not a professional cursive writer, but neither are third graders, so I take my time and write slow. If you can't remember how to write your name in cursive, I'm sure there's videos online that teaches you cursive, the entire alphabet. But now that I've done my first and last name, I can look at this and say, well, maybe I want to work with the name Darby. And there's some rules about this. First of all, I would probably write Darby all 10 times. So 10 times. And after that, then I would feel confident and ready to move on. I can use this same paper to do the next step. So for the next step, take your clean sheet of paper and fold it in half the long ways. Perfect folds are important. We've been doing origami lately, so folding and creasing is something we should be getting good at. Now that we open it up, we have our line of symmetry. We're going to write our name on this line. I'm going to use the word Darby, the name Darby on this line, because the Y is unique and it goes below the line. And I want to show you what you're going to have to do if you have any letter that goes below the line you write on. So I will lightly write this. And think about this for a minute. The smaller you write your name, the smaller your monster is going to be. The bigger you write your name, the bigger your monster is going to be. You have all this paper and you're going to be decorating it with the habitat or the creature's environment. So you want to make sure that you leave the right amount of space to be able to do that. If it's a little fairy or a pixie or something like that, then being small would be okay. But that would mean you also have the responsibility of filling up your entire paper with its habitat. So here's my Y, and you can see this is pretty simple. The Y stops at the line. That's not really all of the Y because I know the Y goes down and then it curves up, so I'm going to even add that to it. If it was a J, then the J would come up and down and stop, and you could imagine it going down underneath and back up with a dot at the end. That is something important to learn. A P would be the same way. The P would come up and stop. It would not go below the line either. All right, so I'm going to erase that, and we won't actually use that. So Darby's nicely written on the page. In order to make this transfer to the other side, what we're going to have to do is push hard on the pencil that's already there. So let me do that step first. Make it nice and dark and confident. It's okay if you don't follow the line perfectly, but I think you'll find that the closer you are to following it perfectly, the happier you're going to be with your creature. Okay, there's my Darby. I'm going to fold it in half again. Now that I have extra lead pushed onto the paper, I can fold it in half like this. And while it's shut, I could take the back of my finger, or I could take the back of a pencil and start rubbing on wherever the pencil lines are through the paper. If I hold them up to the light, I can see where those lines are perfectly. But I'm just kind of guessing right now on the table. I might be able to see through the paper a little bit, but I doubt you'll be able to see it. If I'm pushing hard enough with the back of my fingernail, it's probably going to start to hurt. So instead of using the back of my fingernail, sometimes I'll use the edge of a pencil, but not a pencil with lead, because the lead would get all over the paper and it would ruin the table later. If I open this up, let's see if it's starting to transfer. It is. You should be able to look carefully and see where my lines are transferring. I'm going to close it and fold it and rub right here a little bit more. It doesn't have to show up perfectly, but the better that you see it now, the easier it will be to trace. And I can see that pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and trace it. There it is. And that's what Darby will look like as a monster. And in fact, if you do this right, you should notice that as soon as you're finished and you turn it, whether it's this direction is facing down or this direction is facing down, it already has some of the characteristics of a creature. And I'm looking at these thinking, oh, these are nice big eyelashes and eyes and maybe nostrils and lips and arms and body and feet. And you can kind of do the same thing with your name. So that's the first step. That's the most important step, and once you're here, you can start adding all of your details. Let's go back to the one of my first name, because you can start to see the details I added were only enough to make your letters look like they were parts of a body. All right, check that out, and I'm going to start to Sharpie this and add my details. All right, so the next step of this was to create a design, and I did that. I turned my letters into my creature. One thing that's really important to notice is that I didn't draw it on both sides. We are trying to keep this symmetrical. So in order to keep it symmetrical, really the easiest thing to do is only draw it on one side and go back to the technique we just used to transfer the name, fold it shut, and scribble like this. And then your designs and your details and all of your character traits for your creature are on both sides. Pretty simple. Okay, so the next step then is to make your creature symmetrical. And sometimes we don't want to make things symmetrical. I understand that. If you don't want to make it symmetrical, that's great. And you can kind of deviate from there to make it look like however you want. But the objective here for this project is to make it symmetrical and to use some of these little techniques and secrets, like rubbing on the surface and using a line of symmetry, to turn your project into a symmetrical monster. So once it's symmetrical, then you can add your background in it, your habitat, the environment. Be as creative as possible. This looks like it came out of the sea, so I might make a floor bed of the sea, maybe a coral reef, or maybe a toxic dump with some barrels with hazard signs on the side or toxic signs on the side, laying or floating in the background, which could be pretty cool. From there, I will use Sharpie, and then after that, I will color it. So here's an example of how I've Sharpied and colored and added my background with a previous creation. So as I draw, I keep in mind where this creature might live. And to me, this one was kind of like a duck, even maybe like a mouse. So I kind of created this pond with maybe some sort of weird bubbles that look like mud bubbles or mutation syrup. Who knows? Have fun with that. Be as creative as you can be, and check back in with me. Let me know how you did, and send me your creations. I'll talk to you guys soon. Keep up the hard work.